Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Tony, we don't get surprised all that often in this business, not nearly as much as you used to. It's kind of everything sort of, you kind of have a sense for how things are going and all that kind of stuff, anything related to Ohio State football. And then, Tony, Monday afternoon, I saw a tweet from longtime friend of the show, Jared Smalley of NBC4, and I thought, did he get hacked? What? Did and it's like, you thought about it for a minute after once your brain had, kind of stopped leaking out of your ears, and then it was kinda like, "Oh, yeah, okay." I mean, I get it. I guess it makes sense in a way. Not the news, Tony, I was expecting on Monday.
Not indeed. And that tweet that you're talking about, the first reply was, "Is this real?" And then the next reply was Jared Smalley saying 100%. And that news that we're going to start the show off with is that Ohio Governor Mike DeWine naming Jim Tressel, former Ohio State head coach Jim Tressel, as his lieutenant governor for the final 2 years of his governancy.
Governorship, I'm pretty sure, is, AP style there. Yep.
Oh, there you go. So Jim Tressel, the quote unquote senator, beginning his political career as the lieutenant governor of Ohio. And I'm just scrolling through his Wikipedia page to see the last time he was an assistant coach. Like, um, and that would be 1985,
Mm.
40 years, 30 years ago, as Ohio State's quarterbacks coach, running
40
backs
years
coach,
ago.
wide
40 years
receivers coach.
ago.
40. Thank you, Tom. My math is, I'm still stuck in 2015. But yes, as the assistant coach for basically the entire offense. So the next in line to rule Ohio with an iron fist and a sweater vest, should anything happen to our beloved governor, is Jim Tressel. Yeah, Tom, a bit of a surprise. And thoughts?
It's interesting, and we're gonna have this conversation as
Mm.
completely not positive, not negative, just sort of like factual basis so that we don't set off whichever half of the audience feels we're being prejudicial against them. Uh, you know, it's interesting because you think of like this is not like a new thing. Tom Osborne, the former Nebraska coach, was a senator from Nebraska. Tommy Tuberville, the former Texas Tech and Cincinnati and Auburn coach, is now a senator from Alabama. So this is not like brand new ground by any means for a guy to go from football coach to politician. Tressel's actually maybe more qualified to do this because he's not just a football coach. He was the Youngstown State head football coach and athletic director back in the 90s before he came to Ohio State. He's been was he the interim president of the University of Akron or the
Mhm,
president of the University
mhm.
of Akron or something like that? And there was a president of Youngstown State. Like, he's actually been in charge of, like, significant major state institutions other than the football program at Ohio State, which, Tony, I'll have
Mm.
in an effort to avoid avoid the controversy myself, I'll have you rank the importance of the University of Akron and Youngstown State and the Ohio State football program later. But you can go through that in your head later. But this is actually one that I looked at once you kind of got over the like what it was like, oh yeah, I mean, I can see that. And he's also someone who within the state of Ohio, I would imagine Jim Tressel's approval rating is probably about as high as anyone, where he's beloved in Youngstown. He's beloved in Columbus. I can't imagine people in whatever Bowling Green or Athens or Oxford, Ohio, or whatever have strong negative opinions on Jim Tressel. Like, he feels like he's probably someone who can step in, not be completely overwhelmed by the responsibilities of the job, and probably be a relatively popular person within the state.
And then today or Monday at the press conference, somebody was asked Mike DeWine about Jim Tressel's future, and DeWine's like, "I just hope he doesn't fire me." That did not happen. Um,
That did not happen. Oh man,
but it
wait,
could.
I to paraphrase another Ohio State football coach, I'd like to know where Gordon Gee is right now. Last I saw, he was in West Virginia. I'm not sure if he's, still there or not, but
I was talking with somebody today, and they're like, this whole politics thing about, a guy who's just famous and as a coach can then become have like a legitimate piece of the government role, legitimate role. I'm like, I'd much rather have it be a guy who's been a university president for 10 years and has been an educator and a coach forever than just like a career politician. And then one way or the other, like, I don't see him doing this for power, which is, I think, a great, good job on you. That doesn't mean he couldn't grab some power in a couple of years when the governor the spot is wide open, and there's going to be a lot of competing for that. But it is a very interesting thing, and to me, like, I'm nobody's perfect, certainly not me, but I've always viewed Jim Tressel as about as good a person as you can find in certainly Youngstown, but in like this industry and now in government because like I think he's a pretty straight shooter, but also the only people you'll ever hear anybody like say anything bad about him is Sporting News, not Bill Bender, but like, stuff the Sports Illustrated, people going back to the 2010, 2011 thing when certainly some people were out to get him and they made the most of what he did and didn't do with the NCAA. But like, I just view him as a really good dude, and I don't see this as a bad thing for anybody.
Yeah, certainly the most high-profile politician out of Youngstown, now surpassing Jim Trafficant, and
Mhm.
fewer indictments. That's good as well. Better hair, all of these things. I mean, 3 for 3 right there. He's someone who anytime you talk to anyone who knows him, like knows him away from the field, away from the program, everyone talks about how he like legitimately cares about people and he guys who played for him 20 years ago will just get phone calls from him just like checking in on them how they're doing and just that's it, like doesn't want anything, doesn't need anything, just like checking in to see how you're doing, and the first guy to pick up the phone if you need help, all that kind of stuff. There's a story that I've probably shared at some point on this show, and this is 20 something years ago now. This was the day of the Ohio State Michigan game in 2002. And I was working in local TV and was also working at the Ozone back then. And the Ozone used to have a pregame event at the Blackwell Hotel on campus, like right across, like catty corner to the stadium. And we had, the Ozone had, I think, a suite or something where we'd have these events, and it was whatever, suite 300 or whatever it was. And friend of mine from the TV station was coming to just like pop in and say hi, and knocked on the door of suite, say 200. And Jim Tressel opens the door and he's like, I don't think I'm in the right place. And Tressel goes, well, who are you looking for? And he told him, he's like, oh, well, I think I could probably, they might be here. I can show you where I think. And it's like, the Michigan game's in like 4 hours. You probably have better stuff to do than like show me around where like, but that's kind of like the Jim Tressel in a nutshell kind of experience where like you probably have other stuff that is, most people would be worried about, and you're kind of like, well, I mean, I can probably help. I can probably help with this situation. So let me help with this situation. And, I think the passage of time has, I think, been very, very good for his reputation, because you look now at the stuff that brought the end of his Ohio State coaching tenure, and it's like, well, that's legal now, and that's legal now, and that's legal now, and it's like, you know, the fact that the Ohio State scandal and the Penn State scandal and the Miami scandal all happened in the order that they did probably made the Ohio State scandal seem a whole lot bigger than it would have if
Mhm.
it had happened 12 months later, 18 months later, and some of the other stuff that had come out around college sports had come out in that order. So, I mean, you got to remember, it was like, what was the SI cover, how deep it went or something
Mhm.
like that. And it was, this incredible scandal, that unprecedented in college sports, that these guys sold memorabilia for tattoos, and a coach signed a thing that said he was not aware of violations. Like, that's it. Like, this is not like an oversimplification. Like, that was the extent of it. And, like, what was the Bobby DiGeronimo thing? There was a booster that got disassociated with something related to something. It was, but like the crux of the thing, the people who were really nailing him to the wall with it were these guys sold their memorabilia, used the money to get tattoos, and someone sent him an email making him aware of it, and then he said he didn't know about it. Like, that's it. And right now, that's like 17 Power 5 head coaches have done something worse than that in the last 6 hours, at least under the 2010 rules. And so, yeah, I think the passage of time has been very good for the view of Jim Tressel changing a little bit, and the fact that Jim Tressel went and was a successful leader in academics, and has shown himself to be much more than just like football robot. Like, there have been football robot coaches at Ohio State. Jim Tressel, very much not that. Very much well-rounded, very, very intelligent, very caring, compassionate guy. So yeah, he's someone who, I'm sure exactly half of the audience is like, well, we're about to find out that I don't like his politics, or we're about to find out that I do like his politics. Like, just purely as a human being, like, I think he's someone who's, relatively easy to feel like good about, regardless of which side of the political aisle you're on.
Yeah, and just hearing stories from having him tell stories and having his players talk about his time at Ohio State. I remember, I don't know what year this would have been, probably like in the middle of his tenure, where he would make all of the players know all of their teammates, hometowns and things like that. And I don't know how deep, I don't know how deep that went, whether it's like, I need at least one parent's name and one sibling or something like that. Or if it's just, hey, see the guy, what's his name and where's he from? Like, that kind of thing is, I think it's probably not as standard as it used to be. But Tom, as we know, back in the coach sitcom days, you only needed 2 assistant coaches. It was a much smaller world back then. And the one story that I'll tell here that I've told before, I think, is talking to Jim Tressel at the Big Ten Media Days in 2006. And he was talking about how he would send his players every year on a scavenger hunt throughout campus. Like, that's another way for them to get to experience college. You're gonna have to go find all of these things on campus. And there was something in some sort of a convenience store somewhere on campus, and, like, basically the entire team just rushed in there and were grabbing stuff, like grabbing something specific. And so, like, they're getting calls like the football team is robbing the store. And so, like, had to dial things back there with the excitement behind the scavenger hunts. But that's Jim Tressel. It wasn't all football. It was football team, but it was a much different. And you'll have a lot of good stories from a lot of good people about their time with Jim Tressel. So there you go, Tom. Did you have anything else that you want to talk about Jim Tressel and his foray into politics, the future? I'm not even going to say anything else.
Yeah, Lieutenant Governor of Ohio, which is wild enough. Yeah, it is. I do think it is going to be good to have someone who is like really familiar with higher education. Like, that's probably for all of these state universities in Ohio. That's probably a good thing to have someone who has run one of them and like knows the stuff that you deal with there, good, bad, and indifferent, in terms of running a state university. So that's probably a good thing there. One last Jim Tressel story. This just popped into my head. I remember while working in local TV, we worked at NBC4 like right out of college, and we covered the Ohio State Alumni Association golf event at the OSU golf course this would have been the summer of 2001. And he had done the 310 days speech at the basketball game. So, it's June, whatever, May, whatever. And we go over there and we shoot, and it's just, oh, hey, it's like, look, all these former players and Jim Tressel. You do the sort of pro forma interview on the importance of the Alumni Association, that kind of stuff. And at the end, I said to him, yeah, I don't, I'm not here to make you look bad. If you don't, know the answer, I won't use it. But how many days until the Michigan game? And it was just like, whatever it was, 187. And he goes, but you knew that already. I was like, you're giving me way too much credit. I did not know that. 20 years from now, I will be able to tell you every day how many days until the Michigan game. Right now, I have no idea whatsoever. But yeah, it was, again, like, it was it was not a bit. Like, that is
Mhm.
like, that was not like a, "Oh, I'm gonna do this once," and it's like, no, he knows, like, he knows. He's aware of all this stuff. This is not a bit. Like, this is genuinely who he is, and people, you may like it, you may don't, but he's, he is who he purports to be.
Yeah, I completely would completely agree with that one. Let's talk about the other big news, the big surprising news of the day. Very interesting with Keenan Bailey, report from Pete Thamel that Keenan Bailey is going to be named co-offensive coordinator for Ohio State. And I was not expecting this. This is he just finished up he's heading into his third year as Ohio State's tight ends coach. But the way Ryan Day feels about this guy. I called him the hardest working coach on the staff at the national championship celebration. So, we get that text. It's like, well, that's interesting. And then the more you think about it, you wonder, is this other programs coming after him? Because every year he's going to have offers. So this is something you want to do for him. I also think legitimately this is something that Ryan Day wants to do for Keenan Bailey. Like, this is to reward you for your hard work. Yes, I understand that titles are so often, well, now you've got these offers, so now I have to promote you in this way, or you've reached some point and somebody's coming after you, so now you've earned this checkpoint. But with Keenan Bailey, who's been around since 2016, 2017 or so as an intern, he's coached every single position on the Ohio State offense at this point. And now I think this is an opportunity for Ryan Day to reward him, but also, like, he's 29 years old. So this is pretty impressive by him. So what was your initial thought when you saw all this and then as you started to process it?
Sorry, I'm just trying to process the fact that Keenan Bailey is 29 years old. That's not information that I had rattling around my head until just now. And now the rest of this show, I'm going to be going like, oh, what was I doing when I was 29? Like, not that. That's ugh. Anyway. Bailey is someone who I think everyone looks at and like, oh, he's the new guy. Why is he? Why would he be getting this kind of a spot? He was the new guy in 2016. His career went 2014 and 15. He was recruiting analyst at Notre Dame. 2016, offensive intern with the running backs at Ohio State. 2017 and 2018, offensive intern with the wide receivers at Ohio State. 2019 to 21, quality control coach with the quarterbacks at Ohio State. 2022, special assistant to the Ohio State coach / quality control / offensive line. And then 2023 and 2024, tight ends coach, and now co-offensive coordinator. What you hear there is, boy, he spent a lot of time in meeting rooms with Ryan Day since the first day that Ryan Day got to Ohio State. Ryan Day got to Ohio State as the quarterbacks coach in 2017. Keenan Bailey has been with the wide receivers, quarterbacks, the special assistant to the head coach, and the tight ends ever since then. He's been with Ryan Day since Ryan Day's first day at Ohio State, which when you think back to how long Ryan Day's been at Ohio State, that feels like that's been a while now. So yeah, he's someone who Ryan Day is working with every day. Like, Ryan Day is generally widely perceived as a offensive genius. So he's been in these meetings with Keenan Bailey since he first got to Ohio State. Obviously, he's somewhat impressed with Keenan Bailey if that's your career track and you're not yet 30 years old. And he's also someone who, when you talk to recruits, when you talk to people around recruiting, it's amazing how often Keenan Bailey's name comes up with recruits, even
Mhm.
with guys who are not being recruited to Keenan Bailey's position group necessarily, or when Keenan Bailey was one of the underlings in the wide receiver room. You heard Keenan Bailey's name an awful lot with recruits in terms of who they liked, who they got along with, who they wanted to go play for. Like, and then you look at Keenan Bailey's time in the tight end room. The last 2 years in Ohio State, maybe two of the best tight end years in Ohio State tight ends recent history, certainly. I mean, you go back 30 years, these are probably two of the 5 best tight end years maybe in Ohio State history. And it's a very talented room right now. It's a very deep room right now. They've brought in guys to the transfer portal. They've brought in guys through recruiting. It's just like I don't know that people spend a lot of time thinking about Keenan Bailey, but the people around the program, whether it's the coaching staff who's sitting in meetings with him or the players who are getting coached by him or getting recruited by him, everyone is really impressed with him. Like, he's someone who it's this is not a 6 months from now thing necessarily, but he certainly seems like he has all of the markings of a future head coach, and probably a fairly successful future head coach at some point at some program somewhere.
Yeah, he is a legit guy. A couple years ago, he was named among the 30 coaches under 30 years old who are like the future by 24/7 Sports. And you mentioned the 2 years that he's had as coach, tight ends coach. I wrote about this with the story, but like the year in 2023 with Kate Stover with 50 catches or whatever and 600 yards, like that was a great year, 40 catches, whatever it was. And then this year, playing 5 guys regularly in every game. The only time there wasn't a 5th tight end playing in the game is when Will Kazmarek was out with his injury for like 4 or 5 games. Other than that, like, he got a lot of dudes ready to play, and then he played them. Like, how can you not love that as a position, a player at that position when, you may not get to play as much as you like, but you're not just stuck on the bench. You will get a chance to play if you earn it. And, the recruiting he's got just in terms of high school recruiting, the 2 guys that he landed this year, Brody Lennon and Nate Roberts, were both well thought of nationally and could have gone a number of places. And they went into Oklahoma for Nate Roberts and got him from what's going on there. And then of course Brody Lennon from Ohio. So they were able to get 2 really good guys. Brody Lennon will be enrolled in June. His school does not allow early enrollees, but Nate Roberts is on campus already. And then Tom, his ability to recruit the transfer portal has been significant as well. When you talk about Will Kazmarek last year, then arguably, maybe not arguably, the number 1 tight end in the portal this year, and Max Clare from Purdue, who had 50 some catches, 600 some yards receiving, and is a legit pass catcher, a guy that is going to probably step in seamlessly for G. Scott and help that position. I don't think I've never seen the Ohio State tight end room as deep as it is now, because you've got Bennett Christian, Jelani Thurman, Max Clare, Will Kazmarek, Nate Roberts, Max LeBlanc, and then Brody Lennon. So you're talking like 6 guys that could be on the roster in June or July if nobody leaves. This is a legit amount of talent, and sure, not all of it's proven, but a lot of the guys coming back got to play this past year, so they're much more experienced than they normally would be, and that's credit to Keenan Bailey for getting those guys ready and then also getting them on the field.
Yeah, and he talks all the time about how the tight end is such a developmental position, and he is perhaps uniquely qualified to coach tight ends because he coached offensive line. You heard that on that list earlier. He coached wide receivers, and tight end is a mixture of those 2 things. And that's one of his sort of standby lines is basically it takes a while because you have to be able to catch the ball like a Big Ten wide receiver, run routes like a Big Ten wide receiver, but you also have to block Big Ten defensive ends. You have to do both of those things. Those are 2 very different skill sets. So in terms of being a tight end, it takes a while to physically develop and then to build up those skill sets. He has started to show where you look at some of the guys who were contributing this year. Yeah, it was Will Kazmarek. Yeah, it was G. Scott. Yeah, it was Patrick Gerd. Those guys had all been around a while, but Jelani Thurman, Bennett Christian, those are guys who are sort of at the point in their development where you'd expect, okay, you're going to start to see a little more from those guys. And you started to see a little more from those guys, and they started to take on a bigger role. Next year, that's probably an even bigger jump for both of those guys, and probably a little bit of a more involvement for Max LeBlanc. And then, bringing in someone like Max Clare, who was pretty much universally called the number 1 tight end in the transfer portal. Transfer portal recruiting is recruiting. Like this is basically, it's all the same thing right now. So if you're an effective recruiter out of high school, you're probably going to be an effective recruiter in terms of the transfer portal, because it's a lot of the same stuff. Like, yeah, you can have the NIL conversation, and I'm sure that's part of the conversation, and that's probably a little more of the conversation in the transfer portal. But when you're coming over, you're not coming over, you leave Purdue to come to Ohio State. What are you coming over for? You want to win more football games. You want to get developed and be able to play in the NFL. Well, if you have guys, if you look and go, well, Kate Stover, he he just went and got picked by the Houston Texans and had a solid first season. And then now you've got G. Scott. G. Scott's going to get drafted. G. Scott came to Ohio State as a wide receiver and has turned into a pretty good all around tight end. G. Scott's probably going to get drafted. Like you have the development track record, you have the winning on the field track record, you have the likable, young, relatable, whatever you want to call it, personality. I'm still absolutely rattled at the idea that he's 29 years old. But someone who's younger and probably can relate to the kids today, Tony, with their baggy pants and their hippity hop and their TikTok and their what have you. You're in it, that's a real complete package. That's someone that, Oregon is currently missing a wide receivers coach. They just lost their wide receivers coach to, I don't know, someone in the NFL. I would bet that the Oregon Ducks would probably love to have Keenan Bailey as their coach or Brian Hartline as their coach or whatever. And if you can give him, if he's ready for a little bit more responsibility, and I would certainly assume Ryan Day is, has a good sense of where he is in terms of his professional development, then yeah, this is a very easy decision. And I think anyone who's looking at this, we did, I have seen people say like, whoa, boy, another internal hire. I don't know about this. This is on the offensive side of the ball. Ryan Day is still in charge in the building. Ryan Day is still going to have his finger on the offense. I would not be nearly as worried about, what is the offensive side of the ball going to look like in terms of, as opposed to like, if you're completely turning over the defensive side of the ball, okay, what is that going to look like? Because then the head coach doesn't have as much, personal input or, personal experience. So, to me, this hire was kind of like, I saw it and I kind of went, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
But nothing that he has shown to this point should suggest like he's not ready for something. Look what he's done with the tight ends. It's been outstanding for 2 years. And so at some point, at some point, like now, you just got to continue to let him continue to bump up and move up because, again, the rest of the nation, head coaches know about Keenan Bailey, and they're going to make they're going to try to get him. And to me, I just see this. I posted this on the board, the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus a couple days ago. Like Keenan Bailey's not going to stay at tight ends forever. At some point, he's going to move. Whether I could have seen a situation where he moved to quarterbacks for 2025 because he was there not too long ago and he has coached every position. And like nobody seemed to have an issue with them taking over tight ends. It's like, well, he never played tight ends. You know how you get that when with quarterbacks or whatever. It's like he never played. It's like you just need somebody who is a good coach, who is laser focused on footwork and hand placement, all of that. Like you can move from position to position. I don't get hung up on that. So his future, whether it's replacing Brian Hartline at some point when Hartline finally goes and becomes a head coach, or if whatever, like he's not going to stay at tight ends for long. And in order to keep him here as tight ends coach for as long as possible, yeah, you're going to have to continue to make it worth his while, even though clearly he's having a good time at Ohio State and probably not looking to leave. But sometimes as a coach, if you stay in one place for too long, then it's like, well, why are you staying there? Like, then it starts to become a black mark on you. Like, why aren't you striving for more? Oh, you don't want more. So you've got a low ceiling or whatever. Like, well, that's not something any of these coaches want to be labeled with. And I don't think that's the case for him. So, good on Ryan Day. We'll see how it goes. Like to this point, Keenan Bailey has shown nothing to think that this is going to be a mistake because he's only excelled with everything that Ryan Day has given him.
Yeah, exactly. He's moved around a little bit, but you've heard good things every single place he's been, and you've seen good track record and good development and all that kind of stuff and good recruiting everywhere he's been. So, this is another incremental step. This is not going from like, well, he's a QC guy with the tight ends and now he's going to be calling plays. Like, this is not some enormous leap. This is like the next logical step. And then maybe if Brian Hartline at some point becomes the full-time offensive coordinator, then Keenan Bailey moves from tight ends to wide receivers, or as you said, Brian Hartline gets a head coaching job somewhere and then Keenan Bailey becomes the offensive coordinator. There's sort of a next logical step after this one, but this was a very logical step. And this is, I think Ryan Day has certainly earned the benefit of the doubt from Ohio State fans for at least until the first 3 and out against Texas, Tony, at least until then. So yeah, I think this is a good, logical, defensible, absolutely sure 2 thumbs up move. And we'll see where he goes from there. But as I said earlier, like if you were going to buy stock, I would be buying stock in Keenan Bailey because I think that's something that that is a stock that is going to continue to rise over the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
For sure. And you say the first third and out. Uh, if it's third and long, forget it. Like it's already over. And then also if it's third and short and they fail to pick it up, yes, also over. So you got to hit that sweet spot of like 3rd and 6 and whatever. And then maybe pick up 3 yards, go for it on 4th and fail. And it's like, well, I like the aggressive approach. So there you go. Jim Tressel is now the Ohio Lieutenant Governor, provided that the Ohio House and Senate approve him. They will. They know better not to than not to. And then, of course, Keenan Bailey, your new Ohio State co-offensive coordinator, per Pete Thamel. Ohio State has not confirmed any of these moves from anything at this point, hoping to have all of that taken care of this week before the end of the week when Ohio State will finally announce all of their coaching moves. So there you go. Thank you all for tuning in. Hit that thumbs up before you go if you have not yet done so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell to be notified. You know all that. And of course, continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.